A recorded vote has been requested on draft resolution A/C3/78/L45 entitled Human Rights and Unilateral Coercive Measures. Does any delegation wish to make a general statement in connection with draft resolution L45 or an explanation of vote before the vote? You first. I give the floor to the United States.
Mr. Chair, this resolution does not advance respect for or protection of human rights. The United States is committed to working with all states parties to achieve our common objectives related to advancing human rights. However, a small number of member states insist on advancing a politically motivated agenda related to so-called unilateral coercive measures. Economic sanctions are a legitimate, appropriate, and effective tool for responding to harmful activity and addressing threats to peace and security. Sanctions can be used to promote accountability for human rights violations and abuses, respond to malign behavior, and counter transnational crime, terrorism, and proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Sanctions are expressly a tool for promoting positive and enduring behavior change. We are clear and transparent about these goals. The United States uses sanctions in a manner consistent with international law with these objectives in mind, and it is not alone in that view or practice. This resolution inappropriately challenges the ability of states to determine their economic relations and protect legitimate national interests, including taking actions in response to national security concerns. The resolution also attempts to undermine the international community's ability to respond to human rights violations and abuses. The United States is mindful of the potential unintended consequences of sanctions. Our efforts are intended to constrain the abuses of governments, not to harm their people. Internationally, we co-penned UN Security Council Resolution 2664 to create a clear carve-out for humanitarian efforts in all UN sanctions regimes. This historic initiative eased the delivery of humanitarian aid to those in need while helping to ensure aid is not diverted or abused by malicious actors. The United States has numerous humanitarian authorizations in our domestic sanctions programs that are specifically designed to ensure our sanctions impact intended targets while limiting the unintended consequences on innocent people. Those who suggest sanctions are inherently unjustified advance a false narrative, and we cannot support this language. Simply put, it is sanctions that undermine respect for human rights. It is not sanctions that undermine respect for human rights. It is rather those who commit human rights violations and abuses. For these reasons, we request a vote and will vote against this resolution. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United States. I give the floor to Niger.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity that you are giving Niger to speak on draft resolution entitled Human Rights and Unilateral Coercive Measures. I would also like to congratulate the mission of Cuba on behalf of the NAM, who brought this draft resolution to success, and the other delegations for their constructive work. There was a conference of heads of state and government of ECOWAS in Niger due to an extraordinary situation on the 30th of July, and they decided to create a blockade against Niger on all transactions and services, including public services, and the suspension of all trade and financial transactions, as well as blocking the borders between Niger and the other members of the organization. These sanctions, these inhuman, unjust sanctions run counter to the fundamental principles inscribed in the ECOWAS Acts and additional protocols. This is also counter to the UN Charter and Article 23 of the African Charter of Human Rights and People's Rights. Illegal sanctions imposed on our country have a devastating impact on women and children who are deprived of their fundamental rights to health and food because the pharmacy, food, and primary goods supply chain is blocked. Therefore, we support this draft resolution that establishes that unilateral coercive measures run counter to international law, humanitarian law, and the United Nations Charter, as well as the norms and principles that rule peaceful relations between states. We urge all states not to adopt such measures which are against international law and prevent women, and in particular children, to enjoy their fundamental rights, including that to food. Therefore, Niger will vote in favor of this draft resolution and calls on all other delegations to do the same. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Niger, who was also the last speaker. Colleagues, we will now commence with the process of voting on draft resolution L45. Just to remind you, nobody may interrupt the voting except on a point of order in connection with the actual process of voting. Delegations are requested to indicate their votes now.
The committee is now voting on draft resolution AC3-78L45, entitled Human Rights and Unilateral Coercive Measures. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are correctly reflected on the screen? The voting has been completed. Please lock the voting machine.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 128, against 54. Abstentions, 0. Draft resolution A/C3/78/L45 is adopted.